All right. Well, today we have Jason Morgan joining us from Buoyant. He's going to be talking a little bit about Linkerd, of course, the original service mesh, but more than just Linkerd, he's going to be getting into installing complex software systems on potentially many Kubernetes clusters. And a good way to do that is GitOps, a topic that, if you know me, I'm particularly excited about. Today, I know Jason's going to be getting into a little bit of a live demo with Flux and talking about the host of tools and just showing how compelling GitOps as a strategy for your platform is going to be. Go ahead and get into it, Jason.
Hey, thank you so much. Let me share some screens here. Well, hello everyone. I'm here today to talk to you about, how to use GitOps with your Kubernetes runtime and some things to be aware of. The kind of main takeaway that we're gonna do today or get into is how are we gonna handle dependencies, right? So before I go through the rest of my slides, just a quick intro. I'm Jason, that person right there. You can find me on Twitter at rjasonmorgan. I'm on GitHub if for whatever reason you want to find my GitHub stuff at Jason Morgan. And if you join the Linkerd Slack, which I hope you do, you can find me there at Jason also. So this is basically my last slide. So let's talk about what we're doing, right? So GitOps is the idea that I can store the state of my platform and the deployed apps and all that stuff in a Git repo as something that's like easily digestible by whatever my pipeline process is. Whatever's gonna like deploy Kubernetes and deploy my platform and my apps on Kubernetes. And like the initial naive take, and certainly my initial take when I thought about GitOps was, I could essentially sync a Git repo that had everything on it with a kube cluster and just let that happen because eventually it would reconcile, right? Like unfortunately, and we're gonna see this in the demo today, like some things need to happen in order, right? Like I need something to bootstrap my Kubernetes cluster. I'm using Flux to do like our GitOps workflow today, but if you're using ArgoCD or some other tool, you need something that's going to connect that tool to your cluster. You need to manage secrets, right? Either, as part of your GitOps flow using a tool like, I think it's Kubeseal by the folks previously at Bitnami, now over at VMware. Configure your secrets, deploy your platform, then deploy your apps, right? And the ordering matters, right? Like I need my certificate manager there before I install my ingress. I need my service mesh before I install my applications or whatever else that's going to be. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and do a demo. Also, if you're watching, feel free to hop on over to the session Slack. If you ask questions, I'm happy to try and answer them live, and then we're going to do a QA after this as well. All right. So can everyone, or see, Lee, if you can hear me, can y'all see the screen okay? If not, I'll just try and make things a little bigger just in case. So what I have here is a Kubernetes cluster that's not configured. So on the right, I'm running kubectl get pods, just looking at all the namespaces. I'm running my Kubernetes cluster over in a cloud provider called Civo, and they allow me to spin up a K3s cluster on demand. And so I have basically nothing installed but what ships with the cluster. And we're going to go from this to like a fully installed and ready to go Kubernetes cluster. So let's kick off. So I'm using the Flux tool, right? So if you think back to the slides, right, I had the kube cluster that I provisioned using the Civo CLI. Now I'm going to actually install Flux and get it ready to go. So the Flux CLI has like a pre-check flag that we can use just to validate that our cluster is actually a good target. Oh, thanks for that, Angela. So let's make this a little bigger. Angela was just saying the writing's a little small. So we check that we can install Flux. So that passed. Now let's actually do the install with the Flux CLI, right? So this is, the process of deploying your cluster and getting your GitOps tool configured. Like that's something that you need to think about in whatever your pipeline is that's going to deploy your clusters and get your platform configured. We can see that the install is finished here. Obviously for a demo, I want to show it live, but in the real world, expect to like put this in Jenkins or put into Concourse if you're using Concourse, or your GitLab CI, whatever that may be. Right, I forgot I put this step in. So I've installed Flux. This was an older step that we can mostly ignore, but this is just validating that I can install Linkerd in the environment. So Linkerd is the service mesh I'm going to use. So at the end of the day, my platform is going to be an ingress connected to Linkerd, which is a service mesh, so that I can encrypt all my traffic with some applications deployed on top of that, as well as a tool called Flagger from Flux, or from the folks over at Weaveworks. And Flagger lets us do progressive delivery. So before I deploy apps, I need my ingress, I need my service mesh, I need my progressive delivery tool all configured, and then I can start adding in applications. For those that are watching, is the font now a little bit better? I'll watch Slack for your responses here. So to get started with Flux, right, the first thing I need to do is tell it what Git repository to follow. If we look here, I've got a little Git repo file. This is just a custom resource definition that tells Flux what Git repo to follow. So I'm telling it, follow the main branch on this Git repo, and if you want, you can go there and check it out. We're going to apply it. And then now I can go down below and just do like k get Git repositories and see that it's in all namespaces. Let me try that again. And we can see that we were able to successfully talk to the repo, and we're going to go ahead and start using it to do the rest of our flow here. Okay. Now that we've got that up, the next thing we want to do is actually deploy our platform, right? And what's going to happen here is I'm going to deploy a platform that's going to include a bunch of components, but I need them ordered. So I'm going to do it. We're going to watch it happen, and then we're going to talk about how we set up the ordering with Flux. So here, what I've done is I've created 5. We call them customizations, right? It's just a Flux concept for, the way we're going to apply the YAML from the Git repo, right? We're going to install Linkerd, which is our service mesh, Linkerd Viz, which is a dashboard. We're going to install some custom resource definitions for Ambassador. Then we're going to deploy the Ambassador ingress itself, and then we're going to deploy Flagger. And a lot of these things depend on each other. So let's see how that works. So first off, what I want to do here is I want to do k get customizations for all our namespaces. And let's talk about what's happening. And I'm also going to shrink this thing down on the left so that we can see a little bit better, right? Like, so what's happened since we started, right? We had our basic components from Sivo. We have the Flux install, and right now Linkerd is installing. And nothing else, nothing else is installing at the moment. And let's talk about why. So watch kubectl get customizations. Right, so what's happening? I'm gonna have to make this way smaller for this to work. So what's happening here is, I've got my 5 customizations, right? My 5 things that are going to be managed by Flux, but none of the others, like none of them are ready, and only one is actually going through the install process, and that's Linkerd. And let's show you why. So we're going to look at our cluster config, right? This is like if I'm the platform team for my Kubernetes cluster, this is the manifest that I've made that is going to define everything that's going in my environment. Right, so I've got my customization for Linkerd, right? I tell it where in the repo to go and what Git repo to talk to. And then what I do is I say for every deployment, so in Linkerd I have, 4 or 5 deployments. I say, don't say this thing is done until this deployment is healthy, right? Or until all these deployments are healthy, right? But the key factor here is this health checks field, right? That's how you can tell. So you can tell Flux what to wait on before it goes to the next step, right? And we see now like Linkerd is finished and Linkerd Viz, that's the dashboard for Linkerd, which depends on Linkerd, is now installing, but nothing else is, right? And we can talk about why. So you create the customization object, you define the health checks in YAML, right? Or in the YAML. And then for the next one, right? So here's Linkerd Viz. It says that it depends on Linkerd to install. So it's not going to try and do our visualization component until the base service mesh is completed, right? And again, we define the health checks for Linkerd Viz. So we can skip through this a little bit. And now let's look at Ambassador, right? Like Ambassador in our case, right? I want to inject, like when I deploy Ambassador, I want to make sure that I add it to my service mesh, because in my platform, say I'm doing PCI data or HIPAA data, I care that I have end-to-end TLS for everything. So I don't want to install my ingress until I can add it to my service mesh. Right, so the ingress, for those that aren't super familiar, ingress is like your front door to your cluster. That's where everything from, the broader network comes into your cluster. And then the service mesh handles encrypting and managing all the traffic between your apps inside your cluster. So again, I wanted Ambassador to wait until Linkerd was ready, right? So I do, and then with Ambassador, I have two installs, two components. I need to make sure that my custom resource definitions are created before I then do the Ambassador install. So I say, hey, like here's Ambassador CRDs on Ambassador. It waits for Ambassador CRDs. And I just got that like dependency chain thing going. I hope that's making sense. Now for Ambassador, once again, I set my health checks, like what needs to be there right before we deploy. And then finally, we're going to add Flagger. So Flagger is a progressive delivery tool. It's pretty neat, and if we have time at the end, I can show that off as well. But it allows us to watch a particular deployment and say, when this deployment changes, we're going to, in a programmatic way, shift some percentage of the traffic from one application to another. But again, right, like I want my ingress there. I want the service mesh ready and healthy, all before I install Flagger, right? So I make sure that it depends on Linkerd Viz, and we get our health checks. So that's that. So this allows me to get my platform, and now we can look. Everything is showing that it's ready. It's going to periodically resync. But I've gone from nothing in this cluster to a service mesh installed, a dashboard for the service mesh, Ambassador, as well as Flagger. And that's my platform in this case. And now that we've got that, we can go ahead and deploy our applications. So we'll do our applications. One thing I want to show you is same thing for our apps, right? Like, because with my applications, right, like I might have sensitive data. I want to ensure that my mutating webhooks and my validating webhooks, the things that might modify or set rules about how my deployments, like my actual apps, look, I want to make sure they're there before I do anything. So if we look at our manifest, right, we just say, hey, listen, our actual apps, they depend on Flagger, Linkerd Viz, that's our dashboard, and Ambassador be there before they'll install. And then for each one, we give Flux the things to make sure it's healthy. So stepping back, takeaway here is when you get started with Flux, really dig into health checks, right? Because they're not like super well pointed out in the documentation, but they're a key component of chaining things. And look for this depends on statement, right? It's going to save you a ton of time and ensure that one component is ready before you go on to the next thing, or that your platform's complete before you do your applications, whatever that may be. And then it allows us to do more of that, apply this whole Git repo to this cluster and let things sync up in an order where everything's going to come out healthy right out of the gate. So yeah, that's that. And now that I've run it, I can run Linkerd check so that my service mesh CLI, just to validate that, everything is looking good. It checks that the mesh is healthy, that the dashboard is healthy, and we're ready to go. So we can clear out of that. And we can now look at what's in the cluster. So a couple things that I wanted to add on here, right? So we've got this concept with Ambassador. It's a bit of a different ingress. So it uses the Envoy proxy to route things in. And what they tried to do with Ambassador is make it really simple to route traffic and set up certificates. So in my case, I've got a cluster. I've got valid certificates on all my routes, and I've got these mappings. So let's take a look at that. So I'm just going to look at what mappings. Think when I say mapping, think something very similar to an ingress, right? Or an ingress rule. So here I've got a couple apps running, so that will have traffic, and I can also look at hosts, right? Kget host-a. Okay. So my dashboard doesn't have a valid certificate yet for whatever reason, but my other apps do. So now I can go over to the internet here, and I can go to, say, podinfo.s1p.59s.io. And so now I've got my application deployed. I've got my application deployed. I've got a valid certificate being handled by my ingress. I've got the mapping through a single IP address, all handled and all being run through because things deployed in a standard ordered fashion, right? So you can see how fast this makes the bootstrap process, right? And really, I did run CLI commands by hand, but there's nothing complicated, right? You could insert that into your Jenkins flow or Concourse if you're using Concourse, whatever that is. Oh shoot, I'm at time. Sorry about that, folks. So that's actually all I had. I am at time, right? Pretty sure. Okay, thanks, Lee. So yeah, there you can go play with these sites if you want to check it out or see more. All these sites are going to stay live. So if you want to go to dashboard.s1p.59s.io, you can actually check out the live service mesh dashboard, so we can see what's going on in this environment, who's routing to what. Hit up podinfo, hit up emoji voto, any of these URLs. Those will work. And I think that's it. We can do more in the Q&A. So if y'all want, we can show off when we head over there. We can show off the Flagger stuff a little bit, so you can see some progressive delivery and how that works. Oh, I do have time left. Okay. Well, let's walk through a little bit. Yeah, so we've got podinfo, we've got emoji voto, got emoji voto. I'll put these in the chat here over in the Linkerd Slack. So we can go play around here from the UI. If y'all want to hit a little bit, we can see traffic flowing through from Ambassador. So we can look at our ingress, right? We can see, who is the ingress talking to in the environment, right? So it's talking to the front end of, I don't know, I'm not sure which one this is. It's probably Books app. And anything else that's flowing through to. And then, yeah, if you side note, if you come over to the Q&A, I'll show you I'll show you how to do the progressive delivery and how that spans out. Check out the Flagger docs, or the Flux and Flagger docs. They're really good. If you want to see essentially how to do this demo, we wrote an article over on the Buoyant website that talks about how do you do Linkerd with GitOps. It's for whatever reason, our marketing department let me get away with a terrible title. So if you search Flux around and find out, you'll find this article. And with that, I'll let you have the last 5 minute backs, and we'll do extra Q&A. Sound good?
All right. Thank you so much, Jason, for that awesome demo. That was a really incredible display of the best features of Flux dependency management and ordering, the best features of modern traffic shaping tools. It's just such incredible content there, and definitely Jason was making himself available in that Zoom Q&A. So if you're jumping in here and you want to really get some hands-on time with somebody who's got a technical mastery of the most innovative cloud native tools in the ecosystem right now, you want to get over to that Slack channel. It is session GitOps, your Kubernetes runtime, and you talk about GitOps and pick the brain of our awesome speaker over there. Thanks so much, Jason. Really appreciate your demo.